Rugby? Why don't we have a list for this one? Rugby. Where is... Sweet jeez, okay. Let's talk about Nothics. I'm starting to see why nobody knows what these things are. Nothics are essentially failed liches, and I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't that just be like a corpse? You'd think so. You would. I mean, we're not far off. Here they are. Nothics. The f*** around and find out of the wizarding hubris personification. Nothics are the horrific remnants of wizards twisted by a dark curse, left by Vcna with what I can only assume is a booby trap so that other wizards don't go after attaining godlike lich powers. The aptly named arcane blight. Although this is arcane in nature, it is technically a disease. If you do find yourself in one of these locations full of arcane blight, you basically get infected with it, and then within 3 days, if not cured by a greater restoration spell, you slowly melt and turn into a Nothic. Your hair falls out, you stop being able to see, and then you just turn into one of these weird goober monsters, which that's the new name I'm going to give. Though this is like a god tier level of disease, once it is contracted fully and you do become a Nothic, you then can only cure it by divine intervention or using a wish spell. But once you do that, you're then immune to it, and then you can be like the king of the Nothics. I'm not sure what you do at that point. Maybe stop going into weird irradiated arcane runes. There's even a handful of cultists that will purposely take acolytes there to do this to them until they transform and then leave. Which makes sense for people who are essentially trying to become liches being like, yeah, I'll bathe in the weird magic radiation. Oops, all Nothics. There are a lot more psychological and physical things that happen to you over those 3 days as you transform. This feels like one of those traps that you could easily get out of, but obviously not. This is another great story hook creator, just like the lycanthropy? What the hell am I saying? Lycanthropy? So that if you give this to your players and be like, hey, in 3 days time, you're going to become a Nothic, they're going to kick it into gear. The aptly named Arcane Blight leaves them with some pretty twisted abilities matching their grotesque forms. They remember nothing from their former lives, and this leaves kind of a clean slate of eldritch eyeball-y goodness. They are essentially the equivalent of someone casting Revivify on a single eye stalk from a beholder. Then again, I guess that's not how Revivify works. Otherwise, you'd have a lot of just animate hands running around. But you are essentially just playing a single eye stalk from a beholder as a character. Like, yeah, let's go with that. You do get some pretty cool stuff, like true sight up to 120 feet, a gaze attack, and some weird insight, which might not be really eye-based, but is kind of on theme, so we're going to go with it. But let's break it down. Even though they come from wizards or magical users, they have no inherent magical prowess. They're basically just going back to level 1 or level 5, depending on how you look at it. But their stats are pretty basic. Their mental stats are kind of leveled out, and all of their bonuses are in strength and dex, which I really think those probably just come from being a monster. So if you are going to play a Nothic, I would suggest maybe going strength and int, because this is kind of a weird build. You are going to be skilled in arcane and insight, regardless of what class you decide to become at that point. But because you lose your sanity as part of the final stages of the blight, I really think wizards shouldn't be your first choice in this class here. Because essentially what this curse does is remove your levels, and then you have to start over. I wouldn't, as a DM, make you start over at level 1, but you do have to pick a different class. So if you were a wizard before, even though you're going to be obsessed with magical items, I think you should have to choose something that maybe is more on the physical side. If you're a sorcerer, I think there might be an argument there to say that you retain some of that bloodline, but it's tainted now. So maybe even taking from that and going more towards a warlock, using your bloodline as now a patron. It's essentially a fresh start. But if you want to go into the kind of kooky, brain-addled wizard, this might be a good way to do it. And I quote, Nothics retain no awareness of their former selves, skulking amid the shadows and haunting places rich in magical knowledge, drawn by memories and impulses that they can't quite understand. And I think that last part is kind of important. This is a good curse. You should become a very powerful wizard, get cursed with the arcane blight, and then kind of forget how magic works. That should be a core tenet of your character. The same is true about other curses like lycanthropy or, well, really just that one. In your quest for power, you find a curse that will give you more power, but you lose yourself in the process. With barbarians, you just lose control of your characters, you start hurting the people you love. But here, you lose the thing that you covet most, which is knowledge. So now instead of unraveling the mysteries of the universe is just out in front of you, and it's kind of driven you completely insane. If the DM wants you to keep your levels and your stats from the previous version of your character, I think that's fine, but it might be a little weird, and I'd say give it a go, but I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Right. Giant eyeball thing. Let's talk about the eyeball and the elephant in the room. Your go-to action now is Rotting Gaze. Rotting Gaze essentially lets the Nothic look at one creature within 30 feet, and the target must succeed a DC 12 Constitution saving throw against the magic, or take 3d6 necrotic damage. You know, it's not quite Beholder level magic, but it's getting there. This is pretty reasonable for a player character. The stats in the book are for a Nothic that's about level 6. So that to me means about a d6 of damage every 2 levels. And I'd normally say it's a DC 8 plus your spellcasting modifier, but since they can't really cast spells on their own, I would say it's just the plus of their proficiency. It works out pretty well for a racially based cantrip. Aside from that, you also get Weird Insights, which is the name of the action, not you just demanding weird shit from the DM. Though you're always welcome to bribe them with Dr. Pepper and pizza before a session. Once again, the Nothic targets a creature within 30 feet that it can see, and the target must make a contested charisma check against the Nothic's insight check. If the Nothic wins, it magically learns one fact or secret about the target. The targets are also immune to this if they can't be charmed. This is where having a really high wisdom could be very beneficial, and this is why I say this is kind of a weird build, because stacking wisdom would make this ability very powerful, but at the same time, it's a bit odd that a wizard need wisdom to learn things about magical things. It definitely feels odd coming from a curse made by Vcna, being the god of secrets. Maybe that or insight should just be intelligence-based. My brain no good right now. That's kind of it. You also get D6 natural attacks because your claws are scary and sharp, and even though you're no longer a wizard, you still kind of have scrawny wizard body. You could go for natural armor that you would get from being a weird aberration, which would give you like 12 plus your dex, but then you can't wear armor, and I think that's fine. You could go with that route, or you could just start wearing armor. I mean, if you're not allowed to be a wizard anymore, I'd say you just go all into the fighter, but it might just be me. There's also another argument to be made about one of these bad boys being a familiar if you were going to like the homunculus build for the alchemist or something, but I'm on the fence about that one. They do look similar, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's kind of in the same vein as the philosopher's stone of where these things came from. But since your main job now is to seek out weird secrets and find magical shit to steal, I would think that you should also get bonuses to stealth and maybe a climb speed. But then again, hanging upside down from the ceiling, the eyeball might give you away. Somehow the keys do it though. And that weird guy from Splinter Cell. Now get out there and give people the stink eye. Oh my god, why didn't they call it that? That was a big missed opportunity there. Keep your dice on the table, people. Thanks again to all my Patreon members for keeping this channel alive and well. We are just now hitting 10,000 subscribers, and it's all thanks to your support. Come check out the Patreon rewards on the website as well as in the Discord for some sweet digital images and tokens. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. What rugby? Oh god, there's one right behind me, isn't there? Oh god, don't look at its eyes! Ah! I can see the stink!